Hi, so today I'm going to be demonstrating some ink techniques that you will be using for your first project, and I'm going to demonstrate by doing the feather exercise. I'm choosing to work from life, and I encourage you as you go forward in your artistic careers to challenge yourself to work from life from time to time. Working from photographs is fine, but the camera compresses images in a way that's different from how our eyes perceive things. And so I really encourage you, when you can, to challenge yourself and work from life. I have 3 different feathers here. This one has seen better days. This one I love, but there's so much fuzz that to render something like this in pen would be possible, but not really what I'm looking for. And so I'm choosing to do this one today. So I'm going to work on a scrap piece of illustration board. And to begin, as you would with any piece, place your object the way you want it. I'm just going to do it straight across. And to begin, you need some guidelines with pencil, but you don't need to render too much with your pencil, because the rendering on this project is really going to be done with the pens. So to begin, I'm just gonna add some guidelines with my pencil. Working lightly. Again, always remembering that we're going to have to erase the pencil lines. And again, I'm just adding some simple guidelines, not every stroke. And for this particular feather, the stripes are going to play a key role. So I'm going to want to pay attention to those and their placement, not filling them in with graphite, but just placing them where I'm going to want them. And I always say with botanical items or items from nature, it's a nice place to work from life, because there's some room for interpretation, where if you're doing a different kind of project like a celebrity likeness, it has to be pretty precise. Whereas with items from nature, there can be room for some variance. Okay, these fringy parts here, I'm not even gonna bother doing with the pencil. Okay, and then the stripes. And the great thing about rendering feathers, especially with pen and ink, is there's a natural grain to the way that feathers grow, which is going to tell you where lines go and the direction lines go. Something you're going to find working with pen and ink is the direction of your strokes is just as important as the shape of what you're creating. Okay, so there are some simple guidelines that might be a little hard to see. Now, I like using Micron pens. They are waterproof, so once they're fully dry, you can use wet media on top of them and they're not gonna run. 005 is the smallest I have in this particular set, with the 08 being the thickest. Things to remember when you're rendering in ink is to resist the temptation to outline. So for example, rendering this dark part, we might be tempted to outline the shape, but then you're going to be left with an outline and that's not there in the real object. And so what I like to do, so I'm going to start with this middle line with a mid-size. This is a 0.3. And where I see it, I'm just going to start rendering that in. Be careful when you're using ink pens not to press too hard. They can bend, and you can do multiple strokes and treat them almost like a paintbrush as you go. The other thing to remember is to work in layers. So for example, if I was going to render or begin rendering this darker part here, I can use a thin stroke and start with a thin layer, and then if I feel like it needs to be built up more, I can come over it again. So as you're working, pay attention to the direction of lines and remember that you can add up layers. So if you feel like your first layer isn't dark enough, you can come again, and where you see subtle shadow and thickness, go over those lines again to build up the space. As you can see, it's going to take several layers to build this up, but you can always add more ink to your surface, but you can't take it away. So there is a challenge with this project to work slowly, building up in layers, adding more as needed, but not coming in super dark to begin with. For these fringy parts back here, I'm going to switch to my smallest tip and just barely indicate to begin where they would be. Same with this light colored end of the feather. Adding subtle detail and shadow first and building up as necessary.